With the 86th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Malik Willis, quarterback, Liberty.
Pick number 86. This means that teams passed on Malik Willis 85 times to be the future of their franchise. 85 picks, 30 teams, multiple times passed on Malik Willis, passed on a potential superstar. So why exactly did a guy like Malik Willis fall in the draft? And will he prove everyone wrong, or will he be the next in line of good quarterback prospects who never live up to expectations? So when we look at Malik Willis's game, what does he bring to the table? What does he bring to the table as a prospect? Well, the one thing that stands out to me are his physical traits. Malik Willis has a special arm alongside great legs to make guys miss and extend a play to hopefully hit a guy on the move. And that's the upside of Malik Willis. All of the physical tools are there. It reminds me of a Patrick Mahomes, an Aaron Rodgers, a Josh Allen, the absolute freaks of nature athletically, the guys that are the best quarterbacks in the league today, the guys that can create outside of the system. And that's what I believe Malik Willis brings to the table and can become as he continues to develop. Now, when talking about Malik Willis, for a lot of people, there came a big, but can he truly be an NFL quarterback? There were a lot of concerns that came up about Malik Willis, and that list contained the following. He didn't play really in an NFL offense. Things were easy for him. He didn't really have to move beyond his first read too often. He was a read and go kind of guy. If the first guy wasn't open, he would just take off with his legs and he would not go much beyond that. That doesn't cut it in the NFL. He puts the ball in harm's way too much. And, of course, he played lower level competition. Those were the main knocks on Malik Willis in college. And really, I agree with a lot of these things. Malik Willis was really a one read and go type of player in college. He did put the ball in harm's way a good amount, more than he should have. He did play at Liberty, where a lot of the type of competition was not great. But the game in the NFL is always risk versus reward. How do the positives in a player's game compare to the negatives in their game? Is a player worth the risk? We look at just this year, the number one pick, Travon Walker, is a perfect example of this. A player who lacked some refinement as a pass rusher, but his special athleticism outweighs that negative. So I think it's only fair that we do the same here with Malik Willis. What matters more? The fact that Malik Willis is a special athlete who has a huge arm all over the field that can make defender after defender miss in the open field, or the fact that his processing is not amazing, and that he puts the ball in harm's way a bit too much, and that he maybe didn't play the best competition in college. What matters more? Because if your answer was that all of the negatives matter more, then why don't you go back in time and pass up on Josh Allen as well, whose positives were his huge arm and ability to move and his special athleticism that just we don't see too often coming out of the draft, while his negatives were his level of competition, decision-making, and accuracy. Why don't you go back in time and pass up on Lamar Jackson, just like 31 teams did in the 2018 draft? A player who was a special athlete who lacked some NFL-level processing and accuracy. Why don't you go back and pass up on Justin Herbert or a Patrick Mahomes? All guys who were, quote, risky, and that teams were hesitant about and passed on because of the negatives in their game. However, despite these negatives, all of these players are elite franchise quarterbacks in the NFL. And I guarantee you that the teams are regretting their decision now to not take any of those guys. And to me, this is what Malik Willis is. Another guy who has special traits that was passed on because of a lack of some NFL level traits such as processing and decision making. Another guy who can turn into one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Another guy that teams will regret not taking to address their need at quarterback. When I look at this year's draft, there were multiple teams who should not have passed on Malik Willis by any means. Here is a list of teams who I believe should not have passed on him. Those teams being the Falcons, the Seahawks, the Panthers, the Giants, the Steelers, the Commanders, the Saints, and the Vikings, all of whom should have 100% taken Malik Willis. And I know, but Spencer, they were able to fill their needs with good players. Malik Willis is not worth the risk. Well, there's a few things I have to say to that. The first being, let's not act like these other players they drafted are a guarantee. Yeah, they might have a decent chance at working out, maybe a better chance at working out than Malik Willis. But when we look at the hit rate of first-round picks, it's only about 50% anyway, regardless of position. So even though Malik Willis might be a risky pick, the other players they took are far from a guarantee. Then secondly, even if a Charles Cross or a Drake London works out, their value pales in comparison to the value that Malik Willis could hold if he works out. Because quarterback is just so much more naturally valuable than every other position on the field. And that is why I am a huge proponent of drafting a quarterback. And then, not to mention, many of these teams had multiple chances to get Malik Willis. It wasn't that they just passed on him once. For some teams, they passed on him twice, even 3 times. So these teams, to me, made a huge mistake passing up on the upside of a guy like Malik Willis to draft some linebacker in the second round that might start in a couple years. It just does not make any sense to me. Now I know, but Spencer, you're being too optimistic here. You talk about Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, but what about a Jamarcus Russell or a Marcus Mariota? There are also guys who just do not pan out. Guys whose negatives ultimately overcome the positives, as they just never adjust to the NFL game. How do we know Malik Willis is not going to be one of these guys? Well, what I will say is, we don't. And that's part of it. That's a part of the draft. We do not know for sure if Malik Willis is going to work out in the NFL. But as I have talked about, it is about risk reward in the NFL. And to me, Malik Willis is worth the risk. Yes, he might not pan out, but if he does, it will be worth it for whoever drafts him. But this does not mean we cannot make some sort of prediction as to who has success and who does not in the NFL. Because there are separators, things that separate those who succeed and who do not, generally. And the two things, one, the more minor thing being the off-the-field things, the work ethic. We know about Jamarcus Russell, who just would not watch film. Things like that. You just don't get along with your teammates. You don't have the willingness to work hard. That can get a lot of guys. And then the second thing, and the bigger thing, is the situation which a quarterback is put in when they enter the league. All of the guys we talked about, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, were placed in situations that they were able to grow, that built around them and used them the correct way. And as a result, they were able to take their raw talent and be great. And this is where the Tennessee Titans come in for me, and why I believe Malik Willis is in a great spot to prove the NFL wrong and be special. Because the Titans are in a great spot to develop Malik Willis into the player that he can be. To take the raw talent and turn it into something great. They are a well-run team with a good coaching staff and good pieces on the offense for Malik Willis to work with. And he'll be able to learn behind Ryan Tannehill early in his career. A guy who's been solid in the NFL for a very, very long time that he can learn a lot from. And I know the recent controversy about what Ryan Tannehill said about It's not his job to mentor Malik Willis. I don't think it's that big of a deal. It literally is not his job to mentor Malik Willis. It is his job to play quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. Malik Willis will learn along the way from Ryan Tannehill regardless. So I still believe that having Ryan Tannehill there will be very, very helpful for Malik in his development. So the Titans absolutely stole Malik Willis and made a great move by trading up to get him. Yes, he will not play right away. And yes, quarterback is not their most desperate need by any means. But the upside of Malik Willis is just far too much to pass up on. And he will prove to be a great pick for the Titans. So, as we look around the NFL and see what makes a quarterback great, and see players who were special talents that developed the NFL level processing and decision making, it becomes clear that Malik Willis fits the mold perfectly. And when Malik Willis blossoms into something special in Tennessee, the NFL is going to look back and realize that they let special slip right through their hands.